I am 84 years old. 57 of those years I spent beside my wife Elena before she passed away high in the mountains of Colorado. Over those long decades I watched the world change. I watched people change. I watched the meaning of love and marriage change as well. And looking back now, there is something I want to tell you that almost no modern relationship expert will ever say out loud. They like to talk about communication. They talk about compatibility. They talk about bringing the spark back. They write books, host seminars, and record podcasts about these things. But those are only symptoms. Those are the cough and the fever. They are not the disease. The real reason many relationships fail today is a modern illusion, the belief that your partner exists to make you happy. I want you to sit with that idea for a moment. Let it make you uncomfortable if it needs to. Let it challenge you. Because an entire generation has been raised to believe that the purpose of a relationship is personal fulfillment, that someone out there is meant to complete you, like you are a broken object waiting to be repaired. That idea is one of the most destructive beliefs of our time. Elena did not make me happy. And it is very important that you understand what I mean. Elena did not make me happy because I made myself happy. What Elena did was far more complicated than that. She made me furious when she reorganized my workshop without asking. She made me laugh until my ribs hurt during long winter storms. She made me the father of 3 stubborn children who inherited both of our tempers. She made me question opinions I once believed were carved in stone. She brought me cedar tea when mountain sickness knocked me down for a week. And she nearly drove me insane when she left the tractor running outside during the rain. Over 5 decades, she made me 1,000 different things. But being responsible for my happiness was never her job. When you hand the keys to your emotional well-being to another person, you place a burden on them that no human being can carry. You set them up to fail. And when they fail, which they inevitably will, people spend years punishing each other for it. That is the tragedy of many modern couples. 2 people quietly resenting each other for not being an endless fountain of joy. Elena and I were married in 1969. I was 32 years old, which back then was considered late for a man to marry. People talked, but I didn't care, because I was not looking for a missing piece of myself. I was looking for a partner to build a life with. And there is a massive difference between those 2 things. Building a life is hard work. It is showing up at the construction site when your bones ache and the wind is howling so loud you can barely hear yourself think. It is lifting heavy stones when your hands are already bleeding. And sometimes you look at the wall you are building together and realize the other person placed their row of stones slightly crooked. At that moment you have a choice. You can tear down the entire wall in anger. Or you can adjust your next layer so the structure still stands. That is the true nature of a long marriage. A quiet, constant adjustment to another person's imperfections so the roof does not collapse. Today I hear young men come home from their office jobs and complain to their friends that their wives no longer make them happy. Every time I hear that, I almost laugh, because no human being was ever meant to be a permanent generator of happiness for someone else. If you want guaranteed happiness, buy a television, or visit a pharmacist, or look in the mirror. But your marriage is not the problem. Your expectations are. You expected a perfect teammate, but instead you received a complicated human being with their own fears, their own history, their own strange habits and silent ghosts they may never fully explain. Elena was not a woman of many words. She could spend an entire week in the garden and say barely a dozen sentences. In our early years, this drove me absolutely crazy. I read books about relationships that told me couples must communicate openly. So I would sit her down at the kitchen table and say, "We need to talk." She would look at me with wide eyes like a deer watching a hunter. Her shoulders would stiffen, her jaw would tighten, and she would simply wait for my long speech to end. For 12 years, I tried to turn a quiet mountain woman into someone who talked about feelings. And the harder I pushed, the quieter she became. We were both miserable. I thought our marriage was failing because we were not communicating enough. But the marriage itself was not failing. My expectations were. I wanted her to experience life the same way I did, through conversations, explanations, emotional discussions. But that was not her language. Elena processed life through action. When I was overwhelmed with stress, she did not ask about my feelings. She simply went outside and chopped a full stack of firewood so I wouldn't have to. When we had a bitter argument, she did not say, "I'm sorry." Instead, she spent the next day baking my favorite bread and leaving it on the counter with a jar of fresh honey. Her language was labor and care. Mine was words. And for 12 years, I punished her for not speaking my language instead of learning to translate hers. The day my real marriage began, I was 44 years old. One morning, I woke up early and noticed Elena had already gone to the barn. But before leaving, she had sharpened every one of my hand tools and carefully laid them out on the workbench because she knew I had a big project starting that day. I sat there drinking my coffee, staring at those tools, and suddenly I realized something. She had been shouting her love for me every single day for 12 years, and I had simply been too deaf to hear it. From that moment on, I stopped asking her to be someone more convenient for me. I stopped demanding words. And I started watching her hands. And what I realized was that I had married one of the most poetic souls I had ever known. The only difference was that she wrote her poetry in clean laundry, repaired fences, warm meals, and sharpened tools. There is another truth about marriage that many people do not like to hear. You will feel lonely sometimes. Not just occasionally, but deeply. There will be seasons where you feel more alone lying next to your spouse than you would in an empty house. And that is not a sign that your marriage is broken. It simply means you are still two different people. Marriage does not erase the border between two souls. It only turns that border into a place worth living. Many people destroy good marriages because they feel a moment of loneliness and go searching for someone new to escape that feeling. For a few months, the new romance works like a drug. The loneliness disappears, but eventually the chemical excitement fades, and the loneliness returns. Because it was never about the other person. It was about being human. And by then, many people have already destroyed something beautiful chasing a cure that never existed. In the final years of Elena's life, she fought a long illness. During those last months, she spoke more words than she had in the previous half-century. She told me she was proud of the man I had become. She apologized for all the quiet years. She told me she loved me while looking directly into my eyes. And I told her I already knew. The sharpened tools told me. The stacked firewood told me. The warm bread told me. The clean house told me. She had been saying it her entire life. I had simply learned the language. She passed away on a Tuesday while I held her hand. Her final words were not a grand romantic statement. She asked me if I remembered to close the stove flue. She was taking care of me until the very last second in the only way she knew how. So to anyone hearing this story, I want to leave you with one simple thought. Stop demanding that your partner make you happy. Instead, expect your marriage to make you grow. Growth is uncomfortable. Growth is painful. Growth forces you to look in the mirror and realize that half the mess in your life might be your own doing. Stop trying to edit your spouse like a manuscript. Start learning their language, because they are speaking to you right now. You might simply be too busy complaining to hear it. And do not run from the lonely seasons. Sit with them. Endure them. Because if you come through the other side and that same person is still standing beside you, you will understand something that many people go their entire lives without learning. Love is not the absence of loneliness. Love is choosing the person you are willing to be lonely beside for the rest of your life. I chose Elena for 57 years. And if I had the chance to live it all again, I would choose every single lonely minute beside her once more.